Welcome to the UnToxic Boss podcast, where leadership meets empathy and productivity meets compassion. I am your host, Janine K. Brown. We will dive into the world of effective leadership without toxicity. We'll talk about the uncomfortable but necessary conversations about misusing psychological safety. We'll explore how this powerful tool can be weaponized, and sometimes unintentionally, but weaponized nonetheless, and the real consequences when psychological safety is misunderstood or it is misused. And of course, we'll share some practical things that we've done with our clients and things that you can do to better understand psychological safety at work, as well as how you can implement it, right? You can be a champion within your companies on how to create a more psychologically safe space. I want to share a story. I've been working with a client recently, and the conversation started with their top executive around, psychological safety. They had done an employee engagement survey, and out of that employee engagement survey, they concluded that people had concerns or were being negatively impacted by psychological safety at work. So they didn't feel a sense of psychological safety at work. And I find it really interesting that people will say, well, I don't feel psychologically safe, but they don't really know the true definition of the word. Now, that does not mean that they're not being impacted by poor leadership at work, but maybe it's not psychological safety as it's defined for high performing teams and culture. Maybe it's, hey, we just got a bad leader who's manipulative, who is a bully, who is, you can go toxic. We can go down the list. But I want to be really clear what psychological safety really focuses on and just kind of summarize that for you. You can listen to past shows or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. You can get more information on what psychological safety is and some of the topics that we've talked about over the last year. But for the sake of today's conversation and, anywhere that you talk about this term in an organization, on a board, at your companies and on your teams, psychological safety is really focused on the ability for employees to feel a sense of inclusion, a sense of belonging at work based on who they are, their skills and talents, and how they're able to contribute to the overall organization. Psychological safety is also about, their ability to offer ideas, to be creative, to take risks, and contribute to the direction that the company is going. They have a lot of autonomy over their work and their ability to create processes and to share those with others, or maybe even contribute to how something is done that is outside of their purview, their immediate purview. So they're able to share an idea or something that they learned. They can contribute in a big way to an organization. Psychological safety also means that they can challenge ideas. They can even challenge you if you're the boss. They can have a healthy discourse and an opposing viewpoint and not feel as if they're going to be shut down or retaliated against. Psychological safety creates this environment where people are accountable. They can raise their hands and say, I made a mistake, and it not be held against them for long periods of time. And they are given actionable steps on how they can fix it. So psychological safety is really about how we work and how we're able to work in the workplace and contribute, how we can challenge, how we have we can have this sense of belonging in the workplace, and we're not manipulated. And our ideas are free, and we can address bias in the workplace is another thing that is very important when it comes to addressing and talking about psychological safety. So hopefully we are really clear about what psychological safety is. So that's a summary, right? But what we find is that most people don't really understand what psychological safety is. We don't know how to apply it at work. We don't even know how to create adjacency with our own emotional intelligence for psychological safety. Some of us have very high psychological safety at the workplace, right? We're on teams where we know that we have the ability to contribute, that we know that we can speak up with a dissenting viewpoint. We work at, or we have leaders who are focused on our development. So and then we may have a high level of emotional intelligence, and so does our boss. What happens when you don't? What happens when you think you know what psychological safety is? Or maybe you've been trained and you've taken a course on psychological safety, but now you're weaponizing it. And so, what does weaponizing psychological safety look like? It can come in a variety of forms, right? Both leaders can misuse psychological safety and what it means and how it should play out in the workplace, as well as staff and employees. And I want to spend some time talking about how staff and employees may misuse it and manipulate the system that's designed to support them to to be in a psychologically safe space. So if someone just randomly blurts out, "I don't feel psychologically safe with you," I'm going to say, you know what, there may be some manipulation there, especially if you've never heard the term before, if it's never come up in past conversations, if you've never had a conversation about how the employee feels with how they engage with you. They might be manipulating the situation, especially if it's happening during a feedback process. You're sharing something with them that they don't want to hear, they don't like to hear, that's difficult to hear about their performance and your expectations as a leader, what you expect from them. And then they start to say, well, I don't feel psychologically safe. I don't like the way they said this, or I don't think it's fair that I have to do something and someone else doesn't. That is not what psychological safety is. It is not a weapon, a tool to weaponize in the workplace, because I've seen leaders feel completely deflated in some of our work sessions when they say, I had an employee tell me they didn't feel psychologically safe, but I feel like I'm doing everything to ensure that they grow, they develop, they have opportunities in the organization. And then they say this to me, now I don't know what to do, right? Now I feel like I have to write and document everything. I've even seen employees use psychological safety as a way to take a leave of absence. They feel like, you know what, I'm tired of working. This job is too demanding, but I love my paycheck. And then they decide, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to say that this work environment and the pressure is causing me mental anguish. I don't feel psychologically safe. I'm going to partner with a healthcare provider and find a way to leave the workforce temporarily and still get paid. And that is manipulation, right? That is not how psychological safety was designed for teams to work and to foster innovation, creativity, and collaboration. So look out for those signs. If you see a high number of people in your organization taking leaves of absence for mental health breaks, there needs to be something put in place to address that, not to deny the leave, but to address how do they come back, what needs to happen while they're away, if that is possible. But this is why, right, the constant learning and educating your workforce about what psychological safety is crucial and crucially important. So how can we create a psychological safe environment for employees to express themselves? I think it's really important for employees to have a place where they can vent, right? I just got some stuff I need to get out on this project. It's challenging. Working with this team, or maybe even working with an individual, is challenging. I think part of psychological safety needs to be, I can express this. And even if it's riddled and wrapped in a significant amount of emotion, I can say, I just need to get it out. And having someone there, excuse me, that is safe to get it out with is really important, right? So having a leader, I know when I was still working in public accounting, excuse me, I had many moments where I felt like I need to get it out. I want to be able to express, and I just need to vent. And I was really fortunate that I had a place I could go to vent. And I had a person, right? I had my person in the organization. This person wasn't responsible for providing me performance evaluations. They were still a leader in the organization. So when I did have a place that I could go vent, they could turn that around, right? They could reframe what I was going through, not in a way that create made me feel like I was experiencing someone gaslighting me, but in a way that was productive and active, right? So they gave me active things to consider, based on what I was, sharing with them, and also giving me a space where I still had a sense of belonging, that my point of view was valid, my experience was valid. But now, what can you do, Janine, to be a better contributor and to address this issue that you're facing in the workplace? And that's how you should experience psychological safety at work. You should be able to have these breakdowns occasionally, right? Not a whole lot of them. And then have leaders in your organization to help you turn that around. So I think that's a really important part of this. I think what we find when we see the misuse of psychological safety, it's sometimes on the end of the leader. And so, what can a leader do to misuse or manipulate someone, um, and their psychological safety at work? And I was reading the Harvard Business Review, and there was a really great example because I've seen this over and over. So, the example that they use is the leader has a significant amount of work, right? They have a heavy workload and they're trying to delegate that work, but their team members also have a heavy workload. And so instead of having a conversation about the workload, the leader says, in order for you to demonstrate your commitment here, or you being a team player, you're going to help take some of the work off my plate, right? And when people use words like, oh, we want you to be a part of the team, but then you feel this heavy weight around what you're being asked. Sometimes I would question, like, are they trying to manipulate me? Right? They're using these words every time they want me to do something. They're using words that would make me feel as if I said no, I would be wrong. Right? So if I say, well, no, I can't do that because what my current priorities are won't allow me to meet my deadlines. But I feel like I have to say yes because then it demonstrates that I'm not a team player. Because they've already used the words. Hey, you want to be a team player, you want to show your commitment to the organization and to what we're doing. If you want to show that, you'll do this. And so what we would tend to process is, well, if I say no, then they're going to think I'm not a team player. They're going to think that I'm not committed to the work. And that is one of the bigger misuses of psychological safety at work, right? We can't label certain behaviors as being all in, and only being all in for people. And because what people will think is, if I don't want to do it, or if I can't do it, or if I don't do it, then they're going to think I'm not all in. So these positive attributes of what it looks like to be a team player, I won't be demonstrating those because I don't have the bandwidth to take on the work, or it's not a good time for me to take on additional work because I have some obligations outside of my regular work hours that I need to take care of. So I want you to be really clear about these ideologies around psychological safety and how they can be misused and manipulated. And like I said, staff can throw it around and they can say when they don't like the feedback that they're receiving that they don't feel psychologically safe. But also, leaders can use words to manipulate the emotions of employees who are committed and want to demonstrate that commitment. And then they end up overloading themselves, which causes them sometimes not to do their best work. And then the last thing I want to share on this topic, I think is the last thing I want to share. I want to just really quickly kind of address how psychological safety can show up, for us on teams when we are facing a crisis in the workplace. And so when it's all hands on deck or it's a busy season, how can we continue to create a psychologically safe space? And one of the things I don't think teams do well is communicate. I think we have a lot of meetings, but we don't like openly and transparently communicate the real deal around our needs in the workplace. both the employer and the employee. And in a psychologically safe space, we should be able to say, and everybody should know what is happening with the performance of the company, so that they can be a bigger contributor to the success of the company. So, what does that mean? So, for example, if instead of saying, hey, we're setting these goals or we're pivoting and changing our goals in an organization, we say that we find other reasons to try to make sure that people are engaged at work and that they're contributing instead of just being honest. Hey, Q3, we are behind in Q3. In order for us to make our goals, these are the things that are going to be required of us. We're going to have to put in more time. We're going to have to make more phone calls if we're in sales. We're going to have to engage with more clients. We're going to have to, find other ways or additional ways to expand our current services that we offer to our clients. Whatever those things are, I think it's important to be able to share that with your employees instead of giving them additional work and putting on the pressure and everybody is anxious and feel rushed and chaotic. That's when people really start to say, I don't feel psychologically safe here. Because what we have is how we communicate changes when things are chaotic and we're under pressure. And one of those behaviors is yelling in the workplace. I was doing a workshop last week in Atlanta, and one of the attendees in my workshop, we were talking about negotiations, and they shared a story about how their leader, they were in internal audit, and how their director was preparing them to give bad news to another colleague in the organization that was senior than them. So the director was saying, hey, when you interact with this person, this guy, he's going to get upset. He's going to yell. He might even, toss some papers or something. He's going to behave badly. And I just want you to be prepared for it. And then to just kind of brace yourself and ignore it. And so I listened to his example and I thought, in my head, my psychological safety alarms were going off, but also toxic workplace, unnecessary behavior. Who is this child that's leading an organization? Like all of these things I was thinking. And I thought to myself that even how he was sharing the story normalized bad actors and bad behavior in the workplace. That is a misuse of psychological safety. When you are a leader in an organization and your bad behavior goes unchecked, that is a misuse of and how it undermines trust and productivity and belonging in the workplace. No one should be yelled at work. It's just work, right? You should not be yelled at. You should not be belittled, talked down to. No one should throw anything at you. You should not be cursed at. I know there are workplaces and there's regions in the US and maybe internationally where using profanity at work is commonplace, but everybody should know that it's commonplace and it's not directed at you. This is a cultural norm, both where we live and at work. I still don't think it's necessary, but we should all have a clear understanding of what those things are and what they mean. And so when you are in a situation where you don't feel psychologically safe, or you feel like someone is manipulating the situation to get your compliance, that means they are misusing psychological safety. It undermines the true intention of what psychological safety is designed for, right? To create high performing teams where people can speak up, ask questions, admit mistakes without this sense of isolation, being called out, or an interpersonal threat to themselves. And yelling and cursing, being cold and dismissive, belittling is an interpersonal threat to everyone. When we are disrespected and our dignity has been challenged or stripped away from us in the workplace, that's how we see psychological safety being misused at work. So what can you do? The first thing I want you to do is to speak up. Even if you do not believe you work in a psychologically safe space, you must speak up about how the behavior is affecting you, how it's impacting you, right? To be able to say, when you yell, I feel afraid for my safety and my ability to do my work. Right? It doesn't mean that it's going to escalate to an HR matter. although it is an HR matter, right? It is a human matter in the workplace. But being able to pull people aside and say, I often see that when this particular person on our team is talking, you overtalk them, you cut them off, and you just seem really dismissive with them. Is everything okay between the two of you? Right? Letting people know that I see you. I see how you're behaving. And I think we can do that in a way that is respectful. I think first thing we want to do is just lay it out and say, this is how this is impacting me, what I witness and what I experience. And I would like to see our teams work on our communication. I would like to see our teams create a more psychologically safe space, because I've been listening to the UnToxic Boss. And what I've learned from Janine K. Brown is that we could actually be more innovative and creative, and we can foster a higher sense of belonging and inclusion if we use these principles. And what does that do for us if we create more innovation and creativity and belonging and inclusion in the workplace? Everybody wins. We win as individuals, our company wins, our leaders and executives in the company win, and our clients win when we create psychological safety at work. So I want you to just start thinking about yourself, like you're starting to hear these terms a little bit more. Can you unintentionally misuse what psychological safety is designed to achieve? Have you done it? Think about places where you may have done that, both either sometimes even in your personal life, but definitely at work. And think about the behaviors that you witness in the workplace that need some psychological safety sprinkled on them, or maybe things that you witness, or even your own behavior when you get frustrated and you're not at your best, right? So we have these high needs and low needs around psychological safety. And then how can my EI, my emotional intelligence, feed psychological safety with nutrients, right? How can I say that, I have high emotional intelligence, so hey, let me speak up on someone else's behalf. Let me even ask the question, who is not feeling a sense of inclusion in this work? Who are we leaving out? What could we be doing better? Has everyone gotten had an opportunity to speak up and contribute an idea or a dissenting view? Because a lot of us don't even like to be disagreed with. And I think if you can create a thought partnership with people in the workplace who challenge your ideas, you feel free to challenge their ideas, ask tough questions. We get so much better solutions when our ideas are challenged and we can talk it through and we can work it through. So as we wrap up today, I just want you to remember, you don't have to be a jerk at work. You can work in an environment where everyone can thrive. We are here to help and support you do that here on the UnToxic Boss. And just remember, psychological safety is something everyone should do. We're trying to create a workplace where all can thrive. Look in the chat window. There's a great article that gives you a lot more detail that I wrote on psychological safety. That is on the online publication of the Journal of Accountancy. Go to our website. You can find more episodes of the UnToxic Boss and resources for around psychological safety that you can start using for yourself to educate yourself, and also to use for your team. And if you'd like to have more conversations with us, you can reach me. That's Janine at everyday-lead.com. Thank you so much for joining the UnToxic Boss. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. Follow us on social media for more updates and insights. We want to introduce you a resource that we know that will impact your life and your career. It's a book, Unstuck and Unstoppable. It is the ultimate guide to overcoming obstacles and achieving your goals. With practical tips and inspiring stories, the book will help you leverage your value, increase your visibility, and gain recognition to accelerate your career. Get your copy anywhere you buy books, either on Amazon or at our website at unstuckandunstoppablebook.com.